Record. Well, thank you very much for joining us on this, to be fair, sunny Monday lunchtime in March, which is very nice. I'm Caroline Pauling, one of the owners of Peak Accountancy Training, and just to mention that this will be recorded for our YouTube channel. So if you don't want to be on the YouTube channel, do turn your camera off if you wouldn't like, if you don't want to be on it. So. We are looking today, we're going to be looking at suspense accounts. Before that, I'm just going to take the opportunity to just remind you about who Peak are. We offer accountancy courses and accountancy apprenticeships, and we also offer payroll apprenticeships as well. And at the start of the year, we launched a 20% off discount from our courses, and it has been incredibly popular. So we thought, let's extend it. So we've extended it until the 30th of March. So without further ado, let's have a look at suspense accounts. So, suspense accounts, we need them in our accounts at times, is the important thing when we're dealing with suspense accounts. Now, this is going to be part of the Principles of Bookkeeping Controls unit at level 2, and at level 3, it's going to be part of our financial accounts unit at level 3. Now, why do we need a suspense account? Because we are human and we make errors. We do make errors. I make them all the time. And one of those things we've got to be able to do is correct that error in the accounts. Now, errors will usually be identified as part of when we carry out our reconciliations, when we're comparing two things, making sure that things are correct. It's part of what we call in accounts our controls. When we have a control, it's there to make sure that we can rely on those numbers. Are things correct? And this is one of the controls that we carry out when we do reconciliations. Now, we will carry out reconciliations of different types of accounts. The bank, so you would compare the bank statement to your version of the bank in your accounting software. The receivables ledger control account, remember these are our credit customers. And we include their gross figures of what they owe us in total, so that at any one point in time, you can see how much is outstanding from our customers. This one's one of our current assets in the accounts. We also reconcile our payables ledger control account. This one, our credit suppliers. So the amount that we owe to our suppliers, this one is a current liability. What we owe. And then finally, our payroll control account. Now, our payroll control account, during the Principles of Bookkeeping Controls unit, you will do studies purely on the payroll unit. And that payroll control account exists really to make sure that we have allocated all the different parts of payroll, because it includes things like your HMRC amounts, your how much you pay your staff. Do you have any pension? Those kind of things. So the payroll control account is a great form of control and balances to zero at the end of a period. Now we're concentrating, as I said, on suspense accounts today. Now, how else do errors actually arise as well? Well, sometimes you can find errors because you review that trial balance. So at the end of the period, you pull off a list of your debits and a list of your credits. And sometimes you look back. Some organisations will look back at previous periods and they'll say, okay, this figure was very different to last month. Why is that? And often that's done as part of month-end processes. They might suddenly say, oh, my non-current asset figures shot through the roof, but we haven't bought any assets. Why has that happened? So that enables us then, by doing that comparison, to look for trends and what we call reasonableness. Does the figure look right? Is it what we expected? We also find errors by looking at budgetary control. So we could be comparing what we expected to happen in our budget against those actual results. Differences between them could also help us identify errors. Have we coded something to the wrong account by mistake? Now, once we've spotted those errors, we need to make the correction. And that's one of the jobs that we need to do. Now, there's a bit of a process that we follow when we are doing our accounts. We take our source documents, invoices, credit notes, the information from your bank statements and so on, and that goes into your day books. Now, your day books, They summarize things. They gather together similar transactions. And you might remember we have a sales day book. Don't think my writing is quick enough to write them all out quickly. Sales day book, purchase day book. We also have a returns for both of those. There's a petty cash book, cash book. Hopefully these are all coming flooding back. And the point is at the daybook stage is that we are gathering together similar transactions. So all of your sales invoices go in your sales daybook. All your purchase invoices go in your purchase daybook. The returns will record the credit notes. Once we've included them in that list, essentially the daybook, you're gathering together a load of transactions together. We've made a list of them. We total them. Once the daybook has been totaled, we take those totals and they go into the double entry in the general ledger. That's where we start doing those debits and credits. Once we've done all of that, we get to the end of the period and we balance the accounts. So we look at all the transactions on both sides of the accounts. We find our total, and the balance brought down is the one that we record in our initial trial balance. And you will have, as I said, a list of debit accounts and a list of credit accounts. And the idea is when you've noted all of these down, you will have two totals that will always be the same if you've carried out your double entry correctly. Then we do our reconciliations. And our reconciliations, that's when we start doing a comparison. So for example, we would compare, we mentioned before, the receivables ledger control account. Well, that sits in the general ledger, and we might then compare it to our subsidiary ledger, the payables ledger. Or we might find a difference between it because we don't balance. And if we don't balance, well, where's something in this process gone wrong? That's our job, to find out where it's gone wrong. And that's when we need to carry out some error correction and adjustments. And we do those and if you're level 3, don't worry if you're level 2, you won't have seen this yet. If you're at level 3, we'll carry out an extended trial balance where we put those error corrections in. Once we've spotted the error, we've corrected it, then we do our final trial balance. You should get your debits and credits matching, and we get financial statements out the back of it. We get our profit and loss and our statement of financial position / balance sheet. Now, suspense accounts, but where do they fit into this process? Well, you should never have a suspense account at this stage here. We don't want suspense accounts in our financial statements. Suspense accounts are temporary measures, and they arise really for a couple of reasons. There could be a mismatch between your debits and credits. Now, it could be for all sorts of reasons. We're going to look at a few of these in a moment as well, but it could be that you've balanced an account incorrectly. Maybe you've brought the balance carried down into the trial balance rather than the balance brought down. But for some reason, we've got it wrong and our debits and our credits don't match. The other could be because we don't know yet where one side of the transaction needs to be posted. So as a temporary measure, we pop it into a suspense account. And that's one of the key things about a suspense account is that they should only ever be temporary. We don't want them in our final accounts. Our job as accountants is to clear them out and to put them into really where they should be in the accounts. Now, the suspense account will, if you pull out a computer report and you say, produce your trial balance, you have a look at the list of accounts that are in that trial balance, and there is a suspense account with a balance in it. It's your job to then go and investigate it. Your debits and credits will match, but we don't want that suspense account showing. So we need to go investigate it and clear it. That's one of our jobs. We need to make sure that we have done that before we can produce those accounts at the end of the statement, end of the year. Our accounts won't be given a true and fair view of the business if there's a balance in there that we don't actually know what it relates to. Does the balance affect our profit? Is our profit figure incorrect? Does it mean that we should have categorised something as an asset that we haven't? And if that happens, then our value of our business is incorrect. But whatever the reason behind it, we've got to go and change it. Now, it doesn't matter how big or small the balance is, we need to make sure that we actually investigate it because you could end up with a small balance in suspense that's as a result of a number of different transactions. So we must investigate it, we must analyse it. And we've got to make sure then that once we've done that, we can then correct it in the statements as well. Now, this is the bit that tends to be uneasy with students a bit. I know that we all love our dead click, don't we? We love, let me find a little bit more space. There we go, just up here. We love our mnemonics to help us. We have dead click. So debit, expense, asset, drawings, credit, our liabilities, income, and capital. Now, the problem with suspense accounts is they don't sit in one of these categories. You cannot say why you will have a suspense account because they've been forced into there because of an error that has been made. And you don't know what the reason for the error is. So suspense accounts are really going to test your double entry bookkeeping knowledge. And what you've got to do is generally, I would suggest, take a 3-step approach. We can't say that there will always be an expense, that there will always be an income, there will always be a liability. It won't happen. What we've got to do is take a step-by-step approach. So what we do is we look at the information we've been given and you work out what they have done from the scenario that has been posted. So what have they done? Write out from the information you are given how they have posted it to the general ledger. So that's done. That's step 1. Hopefully at that point you'll spot and go, oh, that shouldn't be there. For example, we've posted sales as a debit. Well, sales should have been a credit. What you then do is you have to write out the debits and credits that should have been posted. What's the correct journal that it should be? And then you can work out how to correct it. The difference between the two, the done, the should, the correction. So we're going to have a look at a couple of examples. Now, first off, let's identify very much a level 2 type question here. So the total of the debit column in the trial balance is 187,250. The total of the credit column in the trial balance is 191,500. What would be the balance on the suspense account and would it be a debit or a credit balance? So if we've got these totals, so I'm a very visual person, I need to see this. So I've got debits as 187,250. So pop that down, 187,250 on my debit side. And on my credit side, I've got 191,500. Now, in an ideal world, if this is the total of your trial balances, these two would be the same. Well, they're not. So that means there should be a figure sat in suspense. So where do I need a figure? Well, I'm going to need to make the debits higher in order to balance to that total of the credit column. So I essentially need to find the difference between the two. So if we hit our calculator, get out my bash account, 191,500 less 187,250, that leads you to 4250 as the difference. That will be posted to suspense. And then at that stage, you have a debit and credit balances that match of 191,500. So that then is our trigger to go, right, but why? Why is that sat there? What's gone wrong? Now, in an ideal world, if you've got a transaction that relates to 4250, that could well be something that you need to go and look into. Maybe you could check whether it's something to do with the VAT on something, whether it's a purchase, the net amount. But that's where you would probably start. If that's all you've got, you need to find a location for it, what's happened. So you start investigating it. Now, let's have a look at another example. Again, following that process through we talked before, we've taken our source documents, the sales invoices, we've put them in our sales day book here, and we've got some totals. So in example 2, the sales daybook shows the following. So I've got 4 invoices and my totals have been done for me. What is wrong with the daybook totals at period end? Now, if you do get presented with a question like this, there's no quick way to answer it other than looking for, again, that reasonableness. So if I scan down the column, what's that? 12, 20, 25. So before I even hit my calculator, it's reasonable. Look through my VAT, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, that's reasonable. Let's look at my net. What's that? 2.5 plus 7, 3, 10, another 10, 20, 22. There's my problem. That is far too low. So we should hit our calculator and work out what the net amount should be. So what have we got? Hit the calculator, 25 plus your 73, the 10,637.50 and the 1926.67 should be 22,364. I've not left myself enough space there. I'll write it smaller. 22,364.17. That's where that figure comes from. So what's wrong with the daybook totals at period end? Well, the net column should total 22,364 and 17 pence. So our job is to make sure, well, we know how to do that 3-step approach. What have they done? What should they do? And how do we correct it? So what would be the double entry to this general ledger? What have they done? Well, when you are posting from the day books, I mentioned before, we total the day books and it's always your total figures that will have been posted to that general ledger. So these figures are the ones that will end up in the general ledger. And how do we post this if it's our sales day book? Well, this is basically the total of those sales that we have made. So our customers owe us 26,837. We owe the VAT man 4472.83, and we've made income of, well, we know it's 22,364.17, but they posted it as 2364.17. This journal will not balance. Now, if you tried to do that on a computer system, it actually would force you, and it would usually come up with a warning to say your debits don't equal your credits. What do you want to do? If you override it, what the system will actually do is it'll drop the difference into Suspense. If it allows you to, I should say. Not all computer systems will allow you to do that. So what have they done? Well, they've created an asset of 26,837. That's the amount the customers owe us. So in our receivables ledger, control account, we've got a debit balance. Don't need a pound sign. There we go. We've got one, 26,837. So we debit receivables with that figure. Now, if I've debited the gross, let's think about this logically. We know debits and credits have to be equal. So I would credit my VAT. That shows the amount that we owe to HMRC for those sales that we have generated. So we owe that to HMRC as a liability. We then credit our sales account. And what we've done here is credited it because remember we've took the totals. We've credited 2364 and 17 pence. Now this is where your journal doesn't balance. I've got credits of 6,837, but a debit of 26,837. We would need, therefore, a post into Suspense. And that would be for £20,000. The difference, the imbalance will post to the Suspense account. So this is our problem, and this is our problem. Now, what should we have done? Well, we should have posted it the same way as we did. Debit receivables, credit VAT, credit sales, but it should be for the right amounts. So we should debit the receivables ledger control account. with 26,837. Credit your VAT with 4,472.83 and credit your sales with the net amount, which should have been 22,364 and 17. So this is the should step of the three-step process. Well, it is when I can spell it. There we go. Now it's the should step of the three-step process. Now, as you can see, that's the amount we should have posted to sales, but that's the amount we did post to sales. Therefore, we now need to make a correction. Now, what do we do? Now, I've presented it this way, and the reason I've presented it this way is that I have seen over time questions that look like this from the revision materials that we see online. So what do we do to correct the problem? Number one, remove the incorrect entry. And if we go back, remind ourselves, which one was the incorrect entry? It was this one. The sales was the incorrect entry. So that's the one that we now need to remove. So how do I remove it? I would debit the sales. So that's my first step. So on the sales account, I would debit 2364 and 17 pence. Then they ask you to record the correct entry. So how would I go about doing that? Well, my correct entry, as we pointed out when we looked at what we should have done, was a credit of 22,364.17. So we credit sales with 22,364 and 17 pence. Now, we need to remove the entry to the suspense account. That's the last step of this. Now, where was the entry to suspense? It was set on the credit side. So I need to debit to remove that suspense account. So debit to suspense of 20. Now, if you are presented with anything like this in a practice question, in an assessment, or in the real world, this is one journal. So all of your debits and credits should balance. So let's have a look at it. I've debited 2364.17, debited 20, and credited 22,364.17. Debits equal the credits. I've now got 22,364.17 sat correctly in the sales account, and I don't have anything in my suspense account. Now, you might think, Caroline, there's got to be a quicker way to do this, which some organisations will allow you. Your company policy may be that you don't need to remove it and then correct it. Because what we could have done is debited suspense 20, if I jump back up to that first journal. Well, if I'd have debited the suspense account with 20 and credited sales with 20, I'd have put the right amount into the sales account. So sometimes you can do that with a shorter journal. But I would say pay attention to what it asks you in the question. So you could debit your suspense to clear that suspense account posting of 20,000 and credit your sales with 20,000. So that is just the shorter version of that step-by-step journal. Now it does, as I said, some organisations like you to reverse the original error out completely and then put the new correction back in. Some are happy to do the shorter version. You will learn that as you are working in your organisation. But in the exam, it's down to the examiner who's written the question. So make sure you follow the instructions. Now, when you're doing questions and you think, well, how do I know, Caroline? How do I know if a suspense account is involved? There will be an imbalance. So when you pull out your trial balance, and I know one of the questions that they look at sometimes in Principles of Bookkeeping Controls at level 2, they often say, will this error be identified by the trial balance or will it not? We've seen lots of practice questions out there of that area, of that type. If your debits and credits do not match, then they will identify that problem in the trial balance. So if you've got an imbalance, that will mean that you can see it when you pull out the trial balance. If your debits and credits are correct, but you just maybe posted them to the wrong accounts, then you won't need a suspense account and it won't be identified by your trial balance. Let's just have a look at another example. We've got example 3. The following errors and omissions have been identified as part of the period end process. So I've got a credit note issued to a customer has been completely reversed when posted into the general ledger. The credit note is for £54, including VAT at 20%. Second error, the net column of the purchase day book has been overcast by 245, showing a total on the net column of 10,245. The gross column is 12,000 and the VAT column 2,000. Which of the above errors will result in a suspense posting? So first off, let's consider this one. The first one, we've reversed it. We've done everything backwards. Doesn't tell me we've got a problem with it, just says we've done everything backwards. So debits and credits match in that scenario. So I'm not going to need a suspense account for that. In the second one, the net column of the purchase day book has been overcast. Now, if we've overcast, casting in accountancy is another way of saying we've added it up. If we've overcast it, we've added something in. Somehow, we've added an extra £245 when we've added it up. That means if we've posted 12,000 from gross, 2,000 and a 10,245, there's going to be an imbalance. So the second one will result in a suspense account posting. So error 2 will result in a suspense account. So let's look at each of these. Let's deal with these. Now, what have we done? Let's have a look. So in number 1, the credit note has been completely reversed. So what have we done? Now, I'm actually going to draw this out on, I'm a very pictorial person. I like to see things. So 1, 2, and 3. There we go. So what have we done? Well, we've posted it was a credit note. Let's have a look. We've posted a credit note to a customer. So this is going to it's going to reverse what we did before when we posted a sale. So we're going to be dealing with our receivables ledger control account. I'll just shorten that. Receivables ledger control account. This time we're going to need our sales returns account and we're going to need our VAT. So what have we done? Well, we would have, if we've reversed it, if we made a sale, you would record an asset. If you make a credit note, you want to reduce your asset. But we've done it backwards. So what we've done is posted £54 to the receivables ledger control account. Find your VAT, 20% of the net amount, or find it whichever approach you use to find your VAT. I usually take the gross and divide by 6, whatever suits you. So I've debited 54 to receivables ledger control account, credit £9 to the VAT account, and we've posted it as a 45 to sales returns. That's the net amount. And that's our sales returns and the VAT. So this is the original posting. This is the one that has been done. Okay, so let's pop that into our journal space above. So what have we done? We debited receivables ledger control account. These will be given as drop downs in your exam. Save your writing as much as me. So debit 54, credit £9 to VAT, and credit your sales returns. So that's the journal that I've just written below. What should we have done? That's our second step for this error. What should we have done? Well, let's think this through. This is a credit note. Credit notes mean that you owe your customer some money back. You're potentially going to pay them a refund, or you put a credit note on the system that they can knock off a future payment. So what do? We should have reduced it. So just to change my colour, the red is going to be what we should have done. Whoops. Nice spelling today. There we go. What we should have done. So we should have credited 54 to the receivables ledger control account, debited 45 to sales, and we should have debited 9 to VAT. That's what we should have done. So let me write that out. Let's pop that in that journal space so we've got it. So we should have debited receivables ledger control account 54 credit. We should have debited the VAT with 9 and debited our sales returns with 45. So that's what we should have done. Now, if I want to correct this now, it's not going to be enough to just do that, is it? That's not going to correct this problem. All it does is wipe out the original issue. We actually, to correct it, what we would do is you would have to double it up because you need to post this journal again to correct the problem of doing it wrong in the first place and then put it in correctly as well. So your correction would be to double up that journal. So my correction, let's just write that out. Let's go green because we're right. Green for go. There we go. Receivables ledger, control account is going to be credited with 108. Debit my VAT with 18. And debit my sales returns with 90. That would remove the original problem and post the journal correctly. Let's have a look then at error 2. So if I just go back to the question, the net column of the purchase day book was overcast by 245. So we had 10,245 on the net column, 12 on the gross, and 2,000. Now, your purchase day book, remember this is a list. This is a list of all the invoices that have gone into your purchase day book that you owe to your suppliers. So we need to figure out how we would have posted this. And this is one of the key things that will really help you with these kind of questions. Remember how to do your postings from the day books. So if we've posted a purchase day book, we've got a liability to our suppliers of the gross amount, an expense to our purchases figures, and we reclaim the VAT from HMRC. So what have we done? That's our first step, remember? Well, what we've done is we have credited our payables ledger control account with that gross amount. And the gross amount was 12,000. That's my liability, what we owe suppliers. Debit your purchases with the net amount, but we were told in the question that the net amount was totaled to be 10,245. The VAT was totaled, and remember we reclaim that, so that's a debit as 2,000. Now, why do I know that this is incorrect? Because I would check my calculations at this stage, and if I was finding the VAT on the 12,000, well, that would take you to VAT of 2,000. You can check it. Your net amount should be 10,000. So this journal now does not balance. I've got debits of 12,245, but I've got credits of 12. Suspense account would have a credit balance of 245 to adjust the imbalance of that posting. And again, your computer system may force that to happen if you tried to put that through. What should we have done? That's step 2. What should we have done? Well, we should do this posting, credit your payables, debit your purchases, debit your VAT, but for the correct figures. So we should credit your payables with 12,000, debit your purchases with 10, and debit your VAT with the 2. That's what we should have done. So as you can see, these are the problems, aren't they? We've got 10,245 sat in purchases that shouldn't be there on the debit side, and I've got 245 sat in suspense on the credit side. So what do we need to do? I need to remove this issue. So if I debit the suspense, that removes that posting, credit my purchases, and that will remove the issue. So I would debit suspense with 245 and credit my purchases with 245. Removing the problem from a suspense account, clearing that balance, and also meaning that the figure in the purchases account is now showing as correct. Now, that's a whistle-stop tour of suspense accounts and errors for you. But the common theme we often see in exams is that they are unbalanced. So it could be an error in calculations, as I mentioned before. You could have balanced your account and made a mistake doing it. You might have done a one-sided entry. But when you are doing these in your exam, my top tip would be to read the question and read it carefully. They will give you the information you need to know to be able to correct it, but it will test your double entry. So take your time. As I've done there, write it out on paper. What have they done? What should they do? And what is the correction? If you take a shortcut, and I've done this many times myself, trying to rush something, you will make an error when you take a shortcut. So take your time. What they've done, what they should, what's the correction? Sales day books, purchase day books, posting from day books is often quite a popular area. But in these errors, if there is an imbalance, your debits don't equal your credits, you will identify it in the trial balance, and therefore you'll need a suspense account. If your debits are equal to your credits in the posting, they won't need a suspense account. So I hope that's been useful. If anybody's got any questions, you're very free to ask those now. But if not, thank you very much for coming along today and listening to us talk about suspense accounts.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
Thank you.